No one remembered when the dragon stopped fighting. Some said it happened 500 years ago. Others believed he had simply grown tired of watching the people he protected disappear one by one. But every history record agreed on one thing. The last ancient dragon was waiting to die. His name was Oryx. Long before the first human built a city, long before the galactic empire ruled the stars, Oryx had already become a legend. He had defeated creatures that no longer existed. He had ended wars without breathing fire. Entire civilizations had survived because one dragon chose mercy instead of revenge. But legends do not live forever. Neither do heroes. Now, Oryx was old. His once golden scales had turned dark silver. One of his massive horns had broken centuries earlier. The flames inside his chest burned weaker every year. His wings could no longer carry him across the skies. For almost 1,000 years, he had lived alone, hidden inside the Frostfire Mountains on the forgotten world of Eldoria. No treasure, no kingdom, no followers, only silence. The galaxy believed he had died long ago. Oryx never corrected them. He wanted to be forgotten, because watching everyone else disappear hurts more than dying yourself. Thousands of light years away, another story was beginning. On Earth, a 15-year-old boy named Ethan Walker spent every weekend helping his grandfather in the mountains of Colorado. His grandfather had once worked in mountain rescue. He taught Ethan one lesson that mattered more than anything else. If someone is still breathing, you don't leave them behind. It did not matter whether they were rich, poor, friend, or stranger. If they needed help, you helped. No excuses. Ethan never forgot those words. One afternoon, everything changed. A strange object fell from the sky. It wasn't a meteor. It wasn't a satellite. It crashed deep inside the forest near Ethan's hiking trail. Curious, he climbed over broken rocks and fallen trees until he found it. A small metallic sphere, about the size of a basketball, covered in glowing blue symbols. The moment Ethan touched it, the sphere came alive. A calm voice echoed around him. Emergency rescue beacon activated. Ethan jumped backward. What? The voice continued. Searching for nearest intelligent life form. Confirmed. Human. Warning. Guardian-class life form critical. Images suddenly appeared in the air. Stars. Galaxies. Ancient battles. A giant dragon, fighting hundreds of black warships. The dragon protected entire worlds. Again and again, until eventually, he stood alone. The final image froze. The dragon lay inside an icy cave, barely breathing, his heartbeat slowly fading. Then one sentence appeared. Last guardian life signs failing. Coordinates followed beneath it. Planet Ethan had never heard of. Eldoria. The hologram disappeared. Silence returned. Ethan stared at the sphere. There has to be some mistake. The voice answered immediately. No mistake. Guardian Oryx has protected 4,327 civilizations. No rescue response received in 927 years. 927 years. Nobody came. Nobody even tried. Ethan looked at the glowing sphere again. You've been sending this signal for almost 1,000 years? Affirmative. And no one answered? Correct. The boy lowered his head. He remembered his grandfather's words. If someone is still breathing, you don't leave them behind. He looked back at the stars floating inside the sphere. I don't know how. I don't know where this planet is. And I definitely don't know how to save a dragon. He smiled nervously. But someone should at least go. The sphere became brighter. Human response acknowledged. Rescue mission accepted. Ethan blinked. Wait. I didn't mean. Before he could finish, blue light surrounded him. The forest disappeared. The mountains vanished. Earth itself became nothing more than a distant blue star. Far away, on the forgotten world of Eldoria, inside a cave older than recorded history, the ancient dragon slowly opened one eye. For the first time in centuries, the emergency beacon had stopped calling. Oryx whispered with his weak, ancient voice. No, it cannot be. Outside the cave, an old teleportation gate, untouched for nearly 1,000 years, began glowing once again. The teleportation light vanished. Cold air rushed into Ethan's lungs. He stumbled forward and nearly fell onto a floor made of black crystal. The cave was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness. Blue crystals glowed faintly along the walls. Water dripped somewhere far away. Everything was silent. Too silent. Ethan slowly stood up. His backpack was still on his shoulders. The strange rescue beacon floated beside him. Its blue light illuminated the ancient tunnel. Guardian located. Distance? 93 meters. 93 meters. That was all. Ethan swallowed nervously. I'm really doing this. Every step echoed through the cave. The deeper he walked, the warmer the air became. At first it was barely noticeable. Then it felt like standing near a giant fireplace. The walls were covered with deep claw marks. Some were larger than Ethan himself. Broken weapons lay scattered across the stone. Alien swords, cracked energy rifles, burned battle armor, all covered in dust. They had been here for centuries. This wasn't just a cave. It was the last battlefield. The beacon suddenly stopped. Destination reached. Ethan looked ahead and froze. A mountain moved. No, it wasn't a mountain. It was the dragon. Oryx lay curled against the cavern wall. Even sleeping, he was the largest creature Ethan had ever imagined. His wings stretched across half the chamber. One wing was torn almost completely through. Old scars covered his body. Several ancient spears were still embedded between his scales. His breathing was painfully slow. Each breath sounded like distant thunder. His once golden scales had faded into silver and ash. His eyes remained closed. Ethan whispered, "Oh, my God." The stories had never prepared anyone for this. He wasn't terrifying. He looked lonely, very lonely. The rescue beacon floated toward the dragon. Guardian life signs critical. Estimated survival, less than 72 hours. 3 days. That was all he had left. Ethan slowly walked closer. Every instinct told him to stay away. But another voice echoed in his memory. If someone is still breathing, you don't leave them behind. He reached the dragon's enormous claw. One finger was longer than his entire body. The scales were warm, but weak, very weak. Ethan carefully placed his hand against the giant claw. I'm Ethan. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm not a doctor. I'm definitely not a dragon expert. A small smile appeared on his face. But I came. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, the dragon's chest rose a little higher. A deep rumble echoed through the cave. 2 enormous golden eyes slowly opened. They were ancient, older than history, older than kingdoms, older than almost every civilization still alive. The dragon looked directly at the tiny human. Neither of them moved. Finally, Oryx spoke. His voice sounded like mountains breaking apart. Human. Why? Just one word. Why? Ethan looked into those tired eyes. I got your rescue signal. Oryx blinked slowly. Impossible. I sent that call 900 years ago. I know. No one came. The dragon lowered his head. They were wise. You should leave too. I am dying. Ethan shook his head. No. Oryx stared at him. You fear nothing? Oh. I'm terrified. I'm probably the most scared person on this planet. The dragon almost smiled. Then why remain? Ethan answered without thinking. Because being scared doesn't mean leaving someone behind. Silence filled the cave again. For the first time in centuries, someone had spoken to Oryx, not as a legend, not as a weapon, not as a monster, but as a person. The dragon closed his eyes. I protected thousands. I buried thousands more. I failed every promise. You should not waste your life on an old dragon. Ethan stepped closer. My grandfather taught me something. If someone is still breathing, they're not finished yet. Oryx looked at the boy again. Hope, a feeling he had buried centuries ago, moved inside his ancient heart. Very slowly, the dragon lifted one massive claw. It trembled from exhaustion. He opened it. Inside rested an old crystal. The crystal glowed with golden light. This, Oryx whispered, is the heart flame, the soul of every guardian dragon. If I die, it must never fall into the Empire's hands. Ethan frowned. What Empire? Before Oryx could answer, the rescue beacon flashed bright red. Warning! Warning! Long-range military fleet detected. 37 Imperial warships entering orbit. The cave shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, the sky turned dark. Oryx closed his eyes. They found me. So, it ends today. Ethan slowly looked toward the cave entrance. 37 warships. Against one dying dragon and one 15-year-old human boy. He tightened the straps of his backpack, then quietly said, "No." The dragon looked at him. "What are you doing?" Ethan smiled. "Making you a promise. I didn't come all this way just to watch you die." The mountain shook again. This time, it wasn't an earthquake. It was the Imperial fleet. 37 warships hovered above Eldoria. Each one was larger than a city. Thousands of fighters filled the sky. Dark shadows covered the mountains. The peaceful world that had hidden Oryx for nearly 1,000 years had finally been discovered. Inside the cave, Ethan looked at the frightened rescue beacon. "How long?" The beacon answered immediately. "Estimated enemy landing. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. That was all." Oryx slowly lowered his head. "You must leave. There is still time." Ethan folded his arms. "You've been telling me to leave since I got here. I'm starting to think you don't like visitors." For the first time in centuries, the ancient dragon let out a quiet rumble. It almost sounded like laughter. "You joke. In front of death. My grandfather did too. He said death gets annoyed when people smile." Another explosion echoed outside. Large rocks crashed from the ceiling. The beacon projected a map. Hundreds, no, thousands of red dots. Imperial soldiers were landing all around the mountain. Dropships, heavy tanks, combat walkers. They weren't here to capture a planet. They were here for one dragon. Oryx watched the map silently. "I know that banner. The Black Iron Legion." Ethan looked up. "You've fought them before?" The dragon closed his eyes. "For almost 300 years. They destroyed worlds. They hunted guardians. They killed every dragon they found. And eventually, they found me." Ethan frowned. "But they never beat you." "No. I simply survived longer." Silence filled the cave. Then Oryx whispered, "I was never strong enough to save everyone." Ethan walked closer. "You stayed." "What?" "You stayed. Most people would have run. You didn't. That matters." The dragon looked surprised. No emperor, no king, no general had ever judged him by kindness. Only victories, only wars, only numbers. But this human boy measured heroes differently. Suddenly, the rescue beacon flashed red again. "Warning! Enemy breach detected." The cave entrance exploded. A wall of stone collapsed. Bright white lights flooded into the darkness. Metal footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Dozens, then hundreds, Imperial soldiers entered the cavern. Their armor was black. Their rifles glowed blue. Heavy drones floated above them. Finally, a tall figure stepped through the dust. Nearly 8 feet tall. Dark silver armor. A long energy spear rested on his shoulder. Commander Kaler, the man responsible for hunting the last dragons. He smiled. "So, the legends were true." His cold eyes moved toward Oryx, then toward Ethan. "And someone brought me a witness." The soldiers laughed. Kaler slowly walked forward. "Human, you've chosen a very unfortunate day to go hiking." Ethan didn't answer. The commander stopped only a few meters away. I'll make this simple. Step away. The dragon dies. You live. No answer. Kaler smiled wider. You have 30 seconds. Ethan quietly removed his backpack. He placed it beside a rock, then stepped closer to Oryx. The commander sighed. I was hoping you'd be smarter. Ethan finally spoke. My grandfather always said something. Kaler raised an eyebrow. And what great military wisdom did he possess? Ethan smiled. He said bullies always ask nicely, right before they hurt someone. Several soldiers laughed. Kaler didn't. He simply stared. You think this is bravery? No. I think it's the right thing. The commander looked at Oryx. Interesting. The dragon has survived for thousands of years. And yet, he chooses a child as his final shield. Oryx's voice shook the cave. I chose nothing. He came. Because no one else did. For the first time, Commander Kaler's smile disappeared. He looked at Ethan again. Why? You don't know him. You owe him nothing. You gain nothing. Ethan looked at the exhausted dragon, then back at Kaler. Maybe. But someone spent thousands of years protecting people he'd never met. So I guess it's my turn. The cave became silent. Even the soldiers stopped laughing. Those words didn't sound heroic. They sounded true. Kaler slowly removed his helmet. His scarred face showed no emotion. I've conquered 112 worlds. I've watched kings beg. I've watched heroes surrender. But humans... He shook his head. You people are impossible. He lifted one hand. Every rifle aimed at Ethan. Every targeting laser locked onto the boy. Oryx tried to rise. His injured body refused. No! The dragon whispered. Not him. Kaler's voice echoed through the cavern. Kill the dragon. Leave the boy alive. I want him to watch. Dozens of rifles began charging. Blue energy filled the cave. The rescue beacon screamed. Warning. Lethal energy buildup detected. Ethan slowly stepped forward, until he stood directly in front of Oryx's head. The dragon stared at him. You cannot stop them. Ethan smiled softly. I know. Then why? The boy looked back without fear. Because I made you a promise. I don't break promises. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. Inside, hundreds of Imperial weapons finished charging. Commander Kaler lowered his hand. Fire! Commander Kaler's voice echoed through the cave. More than 200 plasma rifles discharged at once. Blue bolts of energy ripped through the darkness. The cave lit up like daylight. Every soldier expected the same result. One human boy, gone in an instant. But then, something impossible happened. The first bolt stopped. Not because it hit a shield. Not because Ethan moved. The air itself turned golden. A deep heartbeat echoed through the mountain. Boom. Silence. Then another. Boom. The cave floor trembled. Every soldier looked toward Oryx. Golden light spread beneath the dragon's ancient scales. Like rivers of molten sunlight. The heart flame was waking up. The plasma bolts froze only inches away from Ethan. Hanging in the air. Commander Kaler's eyes widened. Impossible. The rescue beacon suddenly spoke. Guardian core reactivation. Heart flame, 12% restored. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. No one understood what they were seeing. Not even Oryx. The old dragon stared at Ethan. You! What have you done? Ethan slowly looked at his wrapped hand. Nothing had changed. He was just standing there. I didn't do anything. Oryx closed his eyes. No. You reminded me. Of what? Why I fought. The golden light became brighter. For centuries, Oryx believed he was the last survivor. The last guardian. The last hope. But standing before him was one stubborn human boy who had crossed the stars just to keep a promise. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, the dragon wanted to live. Commander Kaler immediately understood the danger. Suppress the heart flame. Heavy machines rolled into the cave. For massive energy cannons locked onto Oryx. The rescue beacon flashed red. Warning! Guardian suppression weapons detected. The cannons fired. For black beams slammed into Oryx's chest. The golden light flickered. The dragon growled in pain. Massive chains wrapped tighter around his wings. His breathing became weaker again. Kaler smiled. There. That is where legends belong. On their knees. Ethan looked around desperately. There had to be something. Anything. His eyes stopped on the broken chains. Then, on the old crystal pillars supporting the cave ceiling. Then, on the enemy cannons. He smiled. Commander Kaler noticed. Why are you smiling? Ethan pointed upward. Did your engineers ever study geology? Kaler frowned. What? They should have. Before anyone understood, Ethan grabbed a loose chain lying on the ground. He sprinted toward one of the crystal pillars. The soldiers fired. Blue bolts chased him through the cave. Ethan slid behind the pillar just in time. The plasma blast struck the crystal instead. Crack! The entire pillar split. Kaler suddenly realized what the boy was doing. Stop him! Too late. The crystal collapsed. Thousands of tons of ancient stone crashed onto the nearest suppression cannon. The machine exploded. The golden light around Oryx immediately grew stronger. The dragon took a deeper breath. Commander Kaler roared. Second cannon. Another black beam fired. Ethan was already moving. He wasn't fighting the soldiers. He wasn't trying to defeat the Empire. He was solving a problem. Exactly like his grandfather had taught him during mountain rescues. Don't fight the mountain. Use it. Ethan threw a broken spear into another crystal support. The soldiers laughed. Until the spear hit a natural crack. The entire wall shattered. Another avalanche buried 2 more suppression cannons. Dust filled the cave. Alarms screamed across every Imperial helmet. Suppression failure. Suppression failure. The heart flame reached 28%. Golden fire escaped from between Oryx's teeth. The old dragon slowly lifted his head. Commander Kaler finally drew his energy blade. No more games. He charged. His powered armor cracked the stone beneath every step. He reached Ethan in seconds. The glowing blade swung toward the boy. Ethan barely ducked. The blade sliced through solid rock behind him. Kaler attacked again. Faster. Stronger. Ethan couldn't match that strength. He didn't try to. Instead, he kept moving, using fallen rocks, broken chains, collapsed pillars. Every obstacle became part of his escape. The commander grew angrier with every missed strike. You cannot beat me. Ethan smiled while catching his breath. I know. I'm just keeping you busy. Kaler stopped. His eyes widened. Slowly, he turned around. Oryx was standing, not completely, but higher than before. One enormous wing unfolded. Then another. Ancient fire rolled through the cave. Every Imperial soldier instinctively stepped backward. The dragon wasn't fully healed. Not even close. But he wasn't dying anymore. He looked down at Ethan. You bought me time. Ethan grinned. I figured that's all you needed. Oryx's enormous golden eyes filled with something they hadn't held for centuries. Hope. Real hope. Commander Kaler raised every remaining weapon. Destroy them both. Hundreds of soldiers rushed forward. Oryx lowered his massive head beside Ethan. Little human. I have one question. Ethan looked up. What is it? The dragon smiled for the first time in 1,000 years. Would you care to ride? Ethan blinked. Seriously. Oryx's eyes sparkled. I believe. We are about to leave. Outside, 37 Imperial warships waited above the mountains. Inside the cave, the last ancient dragon spread his wings. For the first time in centuries. With the Empire surrounding the planet, Ethan climbs onto Oryx's back as the ancient dragon prepares to take his first flight in nearly 1,000 years. But the entire Imperial fleet is waiting in the skies. The entire cave trembled. Dust poured from the ceiling. Outside, 37 Imperial warships waited in perfect formation above Eldoria. Thousands of fighters circled the mountains like hungry wolves. No one believed the dragon could still fly. Not after 1,000 years. Not after centuries of poison, chains, and loneliness. Commander Kaler pointed his energy blade toward Oryx. Fire every cannon. Do not let that dragon leave this planet. The order echoed through every Imperial ship. Outside, hundreds of heavy plasma cannons rotated toward the mountain. Inside, Ethan climbed carefully onto Oryx's neck. He had never ridden a horse. Now he was sitting on the last ancient dragon. This is officially the craziest day of my life. Oryx let out a deep rumble. I have carried kings. I have carried queens. I have carried wounded soldiers. You. He looked back with one glowing golden eye. Are the first boy to climb onto my back without asking. Ethan smiled. I figured you'd say yes. The dragon almost laughed. You humans are strange. So I've been told. Another explosion shook the cave. The entrance began collapsing. Oryx slowly spread his enormous wings. The movement was painful. Every scar pulled against old muscle. Every broken scale reminded him of another battle. For one terrible moment, his legs trembled. Ethan gently placed one hand against the dragon's neck. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to stand. Those simple words reached deeper than any battle cry. Oryx took one slow breath. Then another. His ancient heart burned brighter. The heart flame reached 43%. Golden fire flowed beneath his scales. The cave became warmer. Commander Kaler realized what was happening. No! He's recovering. Kill the human. More than 100 soldiers opened fire. Blue plasma filled the cavern. Oryx reacted instantly. Not with fire. With his wings. One enormous silver wing wrapped around Ethan like a shield. Every plasma bolt struck the ancient scales. The dragon growled in pain. Smoke rose from fresh wounds. Ethan looked up in horror. You protected me. Oryx answered calmly. For thousands of years. I protected worlds. Protecting one boy is easy. Ethan clenched his fists. No. No more. You've protected everyone your entire life. It's my turn. Before Oryx could answer, Ethan noticed something. The cave ceiling. The Imperial bombardment had cracked the mountain itself. Massive boulders were hanging above the soldiers, waiting to fall. He pointed upward. Oryx, can you breathe fire? The dragon smiled sadly. Not enough. I only need a little. Commander Kaler shouted. Do not let him breathe. Too late. Oryx inhaled deeply. A tiny flame escaped his mouth. Compared to the legendary infernos of old, it was almost nothing. But Ethan wasn't aiming at the soldiers. Above us. Oryx understood immediately. The small flame struck a cracked crystal formation. The heat caused it to explode. The mountain answered. The ceiling collapsed. Thousands of tons of rock crashed down. The Imperial formation broke apart. Soldiers ran in every direction. Walkers disappeared beneath stone. Heavy cannons were buried. Commander Kaler barely escaped. Smoke filled the cave. Ethan smiled. That bought us a few seconds. Oryx lowered himself. Hold on. Then, the ancient dragon jumped. His powerful legs pushed against the stone. The mountain shook. One beat of his wings. Nothing. The second beat lifted dust into a storm. The third lifted them from the ground. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, Oryx flew. The cave exploded behind them as they burst into the open sky. Sunlight covered the dragon's silver scales. The Imperial fleet froze. Every pilot stopped speaking. Every commander stared. Across dozens of ships, only one sentence echoed through the communication channels. The dragon is airborne. Commander Kaler looked up in disbelief. No, that isn't possible. Oryx climbed higher. His wings were still weak. Every movement hurt, but he was flying. Ethan laughed louder than he ever had before. We're actually doing it. The dragon smiled. I had forgotten how beautiful the sky is. Far below, The forests of Eldoria stretched to the horizon. Clouds drifted around them. For one peaceful moment, the war disappeared. Then, the alarms began. Warning! Warning! Orbital dreadnought arriving. The sky darkened. Something enormous emerged from hyperspace. It wasn't a warship. It was a fortress, nearly 20 kilometers long, covered with thousands of cannons. The shadow swallowed the sun. The name appeared across every Imperial screen. The Emperor's flagship, the Dominion. Commander Kaler smiled for the first time since the battle began. Our Emperor came personally. The flagship's front armor slowly opened. Inside, a weapon unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. A massive golden cannon. Its energy alone caused the clouds to evaporate. The rescue beacon spoke with a shaking voice. Warning! Planet killer weapon detected. Estimated blast radius. Entire continent. Ethan stared at the impossible weapon. They're willing to destroy the whole planet, just to kill one dragon. Oryx looked at the giant flagship. No, they are trying to kill hope. The cannon reached full power. A voice echoed from the flagship. Deep, cold, merciless. Ancient dragon, your time is over. The golden cannon fired. A beam brighter than the sun raced toward Eldoria. The Emperor's planet killer cannon has fired. With no escape route and nowhere to hide, Ethan and Oryx face a blast powerful enough to erase an entire continent, leaving only one final chance to keep a promise that changed the galaxy. The sky disappeared. A beam brighter than the sun tore across the heavens. The planet killer cannon had fired. Every sensor aboard every Imperial ship predicted the same outcome. Probability of survival, 0%. Commander Kaler smiled. It ends now. Far below, cities shook. Mountains cracked. The oceans of Eldoria began to rise from the force of the weapon. Everything was about to disappear. Ethan looked at the beam racing toward them. He had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. He slowly stood on Oryx's back. The wind whipped through his hair. The dragon looked back. Little human, I am sorry. I could not keep you safe. Ethan smiled. You already did. Oryx blinked. You gave me something worth protecting. The old dragon closed his eyes. For thousands of years, he had protected worlds. Today, someone had protected him. That thought awakened something inside him that no weapon could destroy. Not power, purpose. The heart flame exploded with golden light. The rescue beacon began shouting. Warning! Guardian Core, 100% restored. Golden fire spread across Oryx's body. His faded silver scales became brilliant gold once again. Broken horns repaired themselves. Old scars vanished. His torn wings healed before Ethan's eyes. The ancient dragon was no longer surviving. He had returned. Commander Kaler stepped backward. No! No! That's impossible. Oryx opened his eyes. They no longer looked tired. They looked like stars. The dragon slowly spread his wings. Each wing covered the sky like a living sunrise. Every Imperial soldier forgot to breathe. Every pilot froze. Even the Emperor's flagship stopped transmitting. The planet killer beam arrived. Oryx flew directly toward it. Ethan held tightly to the dragon's neck. Oryx! The dragon smiled. For thousands of years, I protected others. One last time, he opened his mouth. Not with anger, not with hatred, but with hope. Golden fire erupted. It wasn't ordinary flame. It was living light. The two attacks collided. The entire sky turned white. Silence. Then, the impossible happened. The planet killer beam stopped. It did not explode. Simply disappeared. As if Oryx's fire had erased it from existence. Across the Imperial fleet, warning alarms screamed. Unknown energy detected. Planet killer failure. System error. Commander Kaler stared in horror. Retreat! But it was already too late. The energy released by Oryx's heart flame spread through space like a wave. Every suppression weapon shut down. Every gravity chain melted. Every prison satellite around conquered worlds went dark. Across the galaxy, millions of prisoners looked up at silent prison gates. The Empire's control was collapsing. Inside the Emperor's flagship, a deep voice finally spoke. So, the stories were true. The Emperor himself appeared on the main screen. An old man, cold eyes, no fear, only disappointment. He looked directly at Ethan. Human, you should have let history end. Ethan answered quietly. My grandfather taught me something. The Emperor waited. If someone still needs help, you don't walk away. The Emperor stared for several seconds. Then the screen went black. Without another word, the Imperial fleet jumped into hyperspace. One ship, then another, then another. Within seconds, the sky was empty. The greatest military force in the galaxy had retreated. Silence returned to Eldoria. The wind carried away the smoke. Oryx slowly landed on the highest mountain. Ethan climbed down from his back. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Finally, the dragon lowered his enormous head. I have lived for over 6,000 years. I have met emperors. I have fought monsters. I have watched stars die. But today, he looked into Ethan's eyes. I finally learned something. Ethan smiled. What's that? Oryx's voice became gentle. The strongest creatures in the galaxy are not dragons. They are humans who refuse to abandon someone. The boy laughed softly. I'm not that special. Oryx smiled. No, you are, because you kept your promise. Days later, the story spread across the stars. Not about a dragon who defeated an empire. Not about a great battle. Not about the planet killer cannon. The galaxy remembered something much simpler. A human boy who crossed the stars to rescue someone everyone else had forgotten. Schools began teaching the story. Children repeated his words. Rescue teams painted them on their vehicles. Soldiers carved them into memorial walls. And wherever hope seemed lost, people remembered the promise. If someone is still breathing, you don't leave them behind. Years later, travelers visiting Eldoria often told the same story. Sometimes, just before sunrise, a giant golden dragon could be seen flying peacefully above the mountains. And if you looked closely, you could see a young human sitting on his back, still arguing about directions, still making terrible jokes, still carrying the same old backpack, because some promises were never meant to end.